Please welcome ASEA founder, Tyler Norton.
Hello, ASEA family. It's great to be gathered here. So thankful for Corey and Erica and all that they do for ASEA. I hope you could feel their energy and excitement and know how excited we are to be here. We're a little surprised, to be honest, that we're still unable to gather, but so thankful for the opportunity through technology to be with all of you. I want to start my remarks this morning by sharing a story that I recently was introduced to that's had an effect on me. It's caused me to consider a little bit about who we are as an organization at this unique stage, having just completed 10 years of our history. As the story goes, and maybe some of you have heard this, over 800 years ago, there was a traveler. He was walking through Europe and came upon a group of workers working busily close to the side of a river. And even though the traveler was in a hurry and trying to get on his way to where he belonged, he was curious about what was going on here. And so he quickly approached one of the laborers there that was working and simply said to that person, "Good sir, what is it that you're doing here?" Now this particular first laborer, whose head was down working, was grumpy and turned slightly and said, "I'm cutting stone." The traveler knew at that moment, okay, I'm not going to get much more from him, and he pivoted his attention to a second laborer a few feet away. He walked over and posed the same question to that laborer. That laborer turned to him and said, "I'm a stone cutter. I traveled here, and as soon as I earn 10 quid, I'll be on my way." It was then that he pivoted and approached a third tradesman that was also there working. He said to him the same question, "What exactly is it that you're doing here?" This worker paused and turned and glanced up and first looked at the eyes of the traveler, and then, beyond eye contact with the traveler, looked up to the sky and said, "I am a mason, and I'm building a cathedral. I've journeyed many miles to be part of the team that is constructing this magnificent cathedral. I've spent many, many months away from my family. I miss them dearly. However, I know just how important this cathedral will be one day, and I know how many people will find both sanctuary and solace here. I know this because the bishop once told me his vision for this great place. He described how people would come from all parts of the world to worship here. Now, he did tell me this cathedral would not be completed in my days or in our days, but that the future would depend on our hard work now." Then he paused reflectively for a moment and said, "So yes, I'm prepared to be away from my family and loved ones because I know this is the right thing to do. I hope that one day my son will continue in my footsteps, and perhaps even his son, if need be." When I finished reading this story, I started to think about the differences in the responses of these tradesmen. One grumpily said, "I'm cutting stone." Another said, "I'm here to earn money, and when I get the money, I'm done. I'm out of here." And as you just heard, the third had this beautiful vision and inspiration as to what exactly he was doing, why he was there. And he understood that this was something that was going to be done for future generations and that it was important. Now, if you know something about the average time it takes to build a cathedral in the great cathedral building era, it's somewhere between 250 to 300 years on the average. And you know, I stopped to think about this, whether it was the 13th or 14th century, and said, can you imagine the whole concept and notion of investing your energy and time, what might otherwise be your entire life expectancy, which by the way then was as low as 30 to 40 years, you would spend in service of something that you would never see completed. You would build something that was entirely dedicated to the benefit of those that would come after you. These visionary cathedral architects, builders, and even stonemasons and laborers, they built, I'm certain, with a prayer in their hearts that their efforts might secure them a place in heaven when their life ended. But they did so also with a vision towards a future, an aim to leave a legacy for the generations that would come, even centuries after them. Now, why does this story resonate with me? Why am I sharing it with you here today? I can't help but process the relationship between that stonemason and my dad, who at the age of almost 70 years old decides we should start ASEA. And I have to imagine, now that we're 10 years in, and I'm here to tell you my dad has watched and participated in and invested in a wonderful 10 to 11 year history that we've enjoyed. But I've also processed the fact that he certainly knew, just like the Mason did, that while he was working on something every single day, he might not see the completion of what it would ultimately become. He did know, much like the Mason story, that people would come and seek a form of sanctuary or a form of solace here at ASEA. And it's made me reflect on the identity statement that we've shared and the concept of we, our legacy. Now, you know, those of you that were participating with us last year in our virtual international convention, we are constantly sharing with you guys these statements of identity that have become very meaningful for us. I want to be clear, they're not just marketing pleasantries or platitudes to me when we say things like, we are Redox, or we are innovation. We declared last year as well, we're ethos, we are opportunity. And then one of those statements, the one that I'd like to zoom in on today in my opening remarks for this awesome day we're going to have, is this concept of we, our legacy. These cathedral builders were literally engaged in an activity on a day-to-day basis, whether it was the architects, the stonemasons, any number of people involved, really in service of something that would come later. And I'm fascinated with the idea of legacy. You know, the derivative of the word, many of you know I love words, that derivative of legacy is interesting. If you were to research it, you would learn that in the late 14th century, in the late 1300s, that legatiae pointed to a body of persons sent on a mission. Let me repeat that. Legatiae, the literal derivative of the word legacy, originally meant a body of persons being sent on a mission. Again, I think of my dad. I think of his vision of building a form of cathedral, and I'm only using it as a parallel, of course. But I am thinking of the people who have found solace here, who have found sanctuary here, whether it's through the community of people that they associate with, the sense of identity, the believing, the belonging, and the becoming. All of these things combine to create this movement or this body of persons on a mission that are legacy. I think it's important to note that we are referring to ourselves in the present tense, that we, in fact, are legacy. Is legacy past something you feel nostalgia for? Is it something you think about in terms of the future, like the stonemason building a cathedral he would never see finished, but knowing that it would be of great service to humanity down from him or after him? Is legacy a present tense concept, a body of persons on a mission today? The word legatus, also a derivative of legacy, speaks to ambassadors or an envoy or even a deputy. Are we not ambassadors today, on a mission today? Or is this something we aim to leave? Now, when you hear the word legacy, if you pause and reflect and contemplate for just a minute about it, you normally hear the concept leaving a legacy, leaving it. To me, that's rearview mirror, right? That speaks to the past. And I think that's certainly appropriate. But I want to challenge you to consider not leaving a legacy, but living a legacy. In fact, I'd like to talk just a little bit about your personal leadership legacy. If we intend to speak of legacy in the first person present tense, or in this collective possessive we, our legacy, then we should be thinking about it in terms of not leaving it behind, although to be sure we will leave a legacy behind. But that would depend on the stones we're cutting today. That would require us to process the present tense that we are legacy today. There is a great urban legend that's told about the American author Ernest Hemingway. And as the legend goes, and there are people that argue whether this happened or not, but I think it's instructive in either way. Ernest Hemingway, it is said, was betting with a group of people at a lunch appointment. In fact, the bet was $10, certainly a larger amount today, but $10 during his era, that he could write a meaningful and impactful story in 6 words. And so as the legend goes, the bet was had, he took the bet, they shook on it, and he pivoted away and scratched on a napkin, after some consideration, 6 words. Turned around, presented his 6-word story in aim to win the bet. These were the 6 words in this Ernest Hemingway story. For sale. Baby shoes. Never worn. Now think about that for a minute. Could he have written 600 words or even 6,000 words that would have spoken almost this haunting notion of for sale, baby shoes, never worn? What would that signal to you? Whose baby shoes were they? Was it a baby never born? And now the shoes are being offered for sale in some form of final statement that they realize I'll never have a child or this child. Really interesting and powerful. And that's a haunting story and speaks to the power of what is known as literary compression. Speaking less, succinctly, right, in such a powerful way. So my research and contemplation of legacy was a journey I went on trying to say, what does this really mean? I wanted to contemplate and consider legacy. I found the story of the stonemason. I thought of cathedrals. I read of these great cathedrals and the people that worked on them that never saw them finished. I considered my dad's choices, kind of like cutting a stone. 70 years old, processing, well, this is the right thing to do. Understanding the vision of what this could and would become, that people would find solace here and sanctuary here in an interesting way, right? As it relates to health, as it relates to wealth, as it relates to community and belonging and culture. I found a leadership institute that was in challenging people to use this concept from Ernest Hemingway of the 6-word story, the power of literary compression, but challenging you to consider, can you write your leadership legacy instead of a story? Can you write your leadership legacy in 6 words? It's an interesting challenge, isn't it? How would you communicate the mission that you hoped that you would inspire in others, remembering that legacia is a group of people on a mission, right? A body of people on a mission, the very derivative of the word from centuries ago when it was used. But what if you could only speak to that in 6 words? So as I pondered this, I pulled out a piece of paper. I started sketching the words that might make it into my 6-word leadership legacy statement. I was so intrigued with it that I walked in to Chuck and Jerem's office, And I was on a call with all of our leadership team. And I said, guys, I want to introduce a concept. I want to challenge you to consider. How would you write the legacy? Now remember, is it leaving a legacy or is it living a legacy? Probably both, right? How would you consider and communicate this idea of a legacy that you want to live as a leader? I'm now not speaking of just Virtus's legacy. I sometimes think that we take possession of someone else's legacy with an aim to further that. And that's great. I think it's very noble to do that. But what is it about Virtus's choices that left a legacy that could inspire you now to say, what are your choices on a day-to-day basis? And how would you define and express your leadership legacy? Our Chief Marketing Officer, Gina, was quick to respond to my request, and I hope she's okay with me sharing these, and the others I'll share. But I was really moved by what she shared with me. She said, my 6-word leadership legacy would be paved a way for women leaders. Wow. I sat and read that several times, and I looked and I said, Gina's doing that. Gina is paving a way for women leaders. What an awesome statement. Now, Gina cheated, and I know she's watching. She cheated because she said, or I might choose this one, so she gave me 2. It's hard, by the way, this concept of literary compression, of taking a concept and narrowing it down. But I want to share her second because I think it signals and talks about her leadership legacy in a way that speaks to why we say we are legacy. She said, my other option would be the team doesn't need her anymore. What a powerful message. She went on to describe in a few sentences, again cheating, but she was giving me the context around the notion of a team not needing her anymore. Can you imagine the competencies, the support, and over time the confidence that would come for a leader to be able to say, I've worked so hard with this team, paving a way for women leaders and my team, that they don't need me anymore. They're working intelligently and capably on their own. Gina, when I read these statements, I said, yes. I just said, yes, that is Gina. What a powerful expression of your leadership legacy. I got others. Our CFO, Dave Wall, sent me one that impacted me. Consistency and integrity create enduring devotion. I'm going to read it again. Consistency and integrity create enduring devotion. Dave and I have a fun relationship. We're always joking with each other. But in that particular moment, it was pretty sober for me as I sat in my office by myself reading this email he had just sent to me. And the reason why is because Dave is a person of incredible consistency and integrity. Few people beat Dave to the office on a given day every single day. And his team is highly devoted to him. And so it made sense to me as he was sharing his 6-word leadership legacy that consistency and integrity would create devotion, a devoted team. I thought of also his relationship with Chuck, who's his direct report, and thought, yeah, he's devoted to Chuck or devoted to ASEA. What an awesome story. And honestly, I don't know if Dave's watching or not, but I said, Dave, from what I understand, I've been told this many times, will get up every morning and make breakfast for his children consistently. It was so interesting to get these words, these compressed, this literary compression, these high meaning, high power packed words back from people whose leadership legacy I have sat front row in both professional and in many cases personal ways and seen the punctuation of these intentions and of these noble statements. It was so powerful. Let me share a few others with you guys. One received from Chris Maston, steadfast servant heart, loves, uplifts people. If you know Chris, couldn't be more accurate. I was so touched by these. From Michelle Ho, who supports our entire global revenue team, she said, commitment to impactful improvements with integrity. Michelle, so powerful. I appreciated that. Our Chief Revenue Officer, Jurg, sent me this and said, Tyler, my father gave me advice earlier in my life that you should be thoughtful with how you treat people because you always see those people twice in your life. And so he said, my 6 words, you meet people twice in life. Meaning my leadership legacy is to always know that I'm going to end up seeing these people again. How I interact with and treat them will come back to me. I think it's interesting that some of the more recent hires that Jurg has made into his team have in fact been people that professionally he's bringing back into his team that he had met long before. He was living that leadership legacy twice in life. So powerful. Thank you, Jurg, for all you do. David Jensen, our head of global supply chain. Just a few more I'll share with you, and then I'll share mine. David said to me, Tyler, I bring teams together and I make things better. Now, Chuck, who I've worked with now for 18 years, actually, I'm going to admit this, late last night walked in and gave me his. Said, I've thought a lot about this. I've had different iterations. Let me set his up for just a minute. See, Chuck was coming from a place of his aspiration, which if you know anything about the Jim Collins book, Good to Great, it speaks about different levels of leadership. And the 5th level, what's known as level 5 leadership, points to this paradoxical blend of true, deep personal humility coupled with a fierce resolve, a professional will. It's kind of this paradox between I'm humble enough to know that I can't do this alone or it's not all me, but I'm fiercely committed and resolved that we will reach our objectives and accomplish what we need to. And that paradoxical blend, if you will, is called level 5 leaders. Now notice Chuck's 6 words and put it in that context. Take the blame, give the credit. So powerful. And truly, I've watched Chuck do that for years. Now, lastly, I'll share with you my 6 words. And frankly, not unlike Gina, I wish I could give 2 or 3 or 4 of them, because it's an exercise I think that can be very instructive in terms of, do you know the cathedral you're building? If you're going to leave something behind, it requires you to live something today. In my case, I landed on these 6 words, and they're really 3 kind of separate statements. Prioritize people. I've once heard said, never let a problem to be solved be more important than a person to be loved. I think in this world, we could give great consideration to what it means to prioritize people. The 3rd and 4th words in my statement, teach truth. For me, I love the opportunity, particularly here at ASEA, but with my children and almost any relationship, to traffic in truth, to find cause and effect in a way, to teach principles like we've talked about for years, the principles that you know are concentrated truth that always portend success and positive outcomes in life. So my first 2, prioritize people, teach truth, and then the last 2 are inspire hope. We live in a world where so many people have accepted less than. And I love to think that maybe some part of my leadership legacy I'm trying to live today would be to awaken and inspire a sense of hope in others. So for me, prioritize people, teach truth, inspire hope. Now, thanks for letting me share some of those, but I have a homework assignment for all of you. It'll be interesting to see how many of you will take me seriously on this, but I want you to send me, and I'm challenging all of you, whether this is your first ASEA meeting or this is your 100th ASEA meeting, I'm challenging all of you to try to sit down and, using the power of what is known as literary compression, I want to challenge you to write your 6-word leadership legacy. And I want you to send it to me. Now, my email address, very simple, tnorton@asea.net. I'll say it again, tnorton@asea.net. You may think I'm crazy sharing my email. You know what I've learned? Most of you won't do this. That's not an indictment. It's just a statement of fact. Oftentimes, when you're in these settings, you'll have some emotional response to what's happening or connect, with this moment, even virtually like this. But sometimes you'll leave this and you'll make your notes from this session part of your library, and not part of your life. Now, maybe that challenge with a little bit of that notion that some of you won't send it to me will increase the number of responses I get. But my challenge to all of you is to write your 6-word leadership legacy. If we were in a group setting, I would pass microphones around the room and I would ask you to take 5 to 10 minutes right now and just do version 1.0. Try to come up with something that you thought was reflective of what it is that you're both living a legacy towards and aim to leave as a legacy into the future. Can you see the power of our identity statement that we are legacy? I don't mean in any way to discount or diminish my father's role as that stonemason who said, this is a good spot for a cathedral and we should build it right here. And people will come from all around to seek sanctuary or solace here. I couldn't honor a person more for what he did. He took an incredible risk at age 70. And we all thought he was absolutely crazy, to be very candid. And if those of you that are trying to figure out who we are, please understand that when this started, I was like, I don't know how this possibly goes. And that doubt and fear and concern for me was countered by my father's vision, just like the stonemason who made eye contact with the traveler and then looked to the heavens and said, I'm a stonemason building a cathedral. I know what I'm doing here and why, and it's worthy of the sacrifice of leaving my family. It's worthy because I know what it will do. Now, that's why I think it's important for us to consider, look, we are legacy, all of us, and we need to pay attention to what that really can mean. Now, if you take those 6-word leadership legacy statements, work on them, share them with your teams, you'll inspire each other. I'm not kidding when I say I sat in my office and was overcome with gratitude and inspiration and power by reading what my colleagues were saying they viewed as their leadership legacy. These were powerful statements. And I think if we will focus first on living a legacy, get really clear on what that is, I truly believe we will most certainly leave a legacy. So as we open this conference, right, let's consider what it would mean to live true to those noble intentions in all that we do. That it would be like the cathedral builder who can see that purpose and value in the work being done today. When Chuck says, take the blame, give the credit on a daily basis, giving credit to those around him, owning his leadership role and responsibility, right? To say, that's my job as a leader. That's the legacy I will leave. The team doesn't need her anymore. Living that every day and seeing the purpose and value in that work today to inspire and develop and promote a team that is moving forward and growing and progressing. So yeah, is legacy past? Is legacy the future, something we're building to some cathedral in the future that we'll never see? My suggestion to you, it's the present. Legacy is today. If Dad had not woken up every day in his early 70s after a multiple decades long career, willing to suit up, come to the office and talk about compensation plans and marketing and travel and meetings and how to inspire leaders and recruit leaders and people and sharing the product. If he hadn't lived in the present, he would not have left a legacy. And so my challenge to all of you is consider that. Is legacy something that looks back? Is it something you anticipate into the future? My argument is it's today. It's the present. It's what you're going to take from today's meeting that will inspire you to do something different, to move forward. Now, you could also say that the present is a moment. And isn't it interesting that the word momentum is largely the word moment? I don't think momentum happens until we realize that living that legacy needs to happen in the present and in the moment. That is to say, how you want to be remembered should probably be coupled with remembering how you want to be, and doing so today. This is the most powerful form of self-authorship. This is our opportunity to have sovereign control over our own leadership influence and legacy on others. This is us becoming an inflection point in the life of others. It is highly introspective. It is highly personal. It is unique to you. And yet collectively, taken as a whole, it becomes our legacy on a daily basis. Remember, momentum comes from seizing moments. Now, I shared with our European associates in closing of my remarks one of my favorite quotes from J.R.R. Tolkien. I'll share it with you and then speak to it a little bit as I close. Tolkien said, "It is not our part to master all of the tides of the world, but rather to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set. Uprooting the evil in the fields that we know, so that those who live after us may have clean earth to till. What weather they shall have is not ours to rule." Now, I want to state this to you again. It is not our part to master all of the tides of the world, but rather to do what is in us for the succor of those years wherein we are set. Think about the 30-year life expectancy of that stonemason doing what was in his years where he was set. And of course, the most noble thing, uprooting the evil that might be in the fields that we know, so that those who come after us may have clean earth to till. What weather they shall have is not ours to rule. There's something beautiful of legacy in that. There's something beautiful in that quote, inviting all of us to consider, I don't have to master all the tides of the world. I just need to do what's in me and in the years I've been granted and blessed with, and uproot the evil in the fields that I know. Do what I can to improve the world in the fields where I play and work, so that those who live after, and here's the impact of legacy cascading, can have some clean earth that they can garden and till. Now, the weather they have, it's not mine to rule. And I think there's a beautiful element of accountability and maybe even essentialism, not doing everything, but doing what's essential, doing my part to help create that clean earth for others. And so I thank my dad. I honor him for doing his part in the fields that he knew, so that all of us can have clean earth to till. I appreciate him taking the risks and having that vision. And yes, borrowing the metaphor of the cathedral builder, seeing what this could be, with an aim towards inviting all of us to participate. Has my father seen the elevation of the cathedral? The answer is yes. But will this cathedral continue to grow? Will the sanctuary and solace it offers continue to expand? The answer to that is yes. I don't mean to overstate the business by comparing it metaphorically with the cathedral. I do mean to tell you that something that takes 200, 300 years to build, that then for me, when I walk in, can be so awe-inspiring, should be a metaphor that we all consider, not so much in terms of just leaving a legacy, but living one today. So I invite all of us, as we're here at this conference, to give thought and consideration to what our leadership legacy will be. What is it that we want to leave behind? What is the mission and the envoy that we're on? I hope as we do so, we'll all awaken to the sense that my father did leave a legacy, but he did it by living a legacy. Hence, we are legacy. Thanks, guys.